Elon Musk will not be joining the board of Twitter after all. The CEO of Twitter announced to everyone, to other board members and to the public, that they made this offer and presumed that he would be joining the board now that he's the largest single shareholder, but he has declined. So there's a lot of different ways to take this. I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter, where else, who are, or at least pro-Musk people, or concerned about Twitter's free speech issues, saying that this is actually, Elon saying, okay, I'm not going to play by your rules. Like, if you're going to, stick me on this board as sort of a cover for you to violate, your users' free speech, and say, no, we take free speech seriously. Yeah. Look, we have Elon Musk on our board, and that he didn't want to participate in that.
Let's read the actual the statement here. So this is what Twitter put out there. They put, "Team Elon Musk has decided not to join our board. Here's what I can share about what happened. The board and I had many discussions about Elon joining the board and with Elon directly. We were excited to collaborate and clear about the risks. We also believed that having Elon as a fiduciary of the company, where he, like all board members, has to act in the best interest of the company and all our shareholders, was the best path forward. The board offered him a seat. We announced on Tuesday that Elon would be appointed to the board contingent on a background check and formal acceptance. Elon's appointment to the board was to become officially effective April 9th, but Elon shared that same morning that he will no longer be joining the board. I believe this is for the best. We have and will always value input from our shareholders, whether they are on the board or not. Elon is our biggest shareholder, and we will remain open to his input. There will be distractions ahead, but our goals and priorities remain unchanged. The decisions we make and how we execute is in our hands, no one else's. Let's tune out the noise and stay focused on the work and what we're building." So people have pointed out a couple of things in this statement that are raising the alarm of like, okay, what happened? The first one being having Elon as a fiduciary of the company, where he, like all board members, has to act in the best interest of the company and all our shareholders. So they were saying that's what he would do if he was on the board. That is part of the rules of being on the board. Elon likes to tweet all kinds of stuff,
right,
and say whatever he wants, and it's
including
not
about Twitter.
Including about Twitter, and it's not necessarily in the best. When he goes around saying, "Is Twitter good for free speech? Does that have a problem? Should we convert the Twitter headquarters into a homeless shelter?" He says all of these things that, from the eyes of the board, could be like, you've now violated this contract, this agreement. You're not operating in the best interest of the shareholders and the company. You have a fiduciary responsibility to this. So if he's not going to do that, perhaps he backed out because he's like, I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to say what I want to say. Mm-hmm. And you guys, another theory is when you're on the board, you can only buy up, I believe.
Yes, I was going to mention this too.
Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
what is the percentage?
So apparently the maximum shares you can hold if you're on the board is 14.9%. According to what I'm reading on Twitter. I don't know that that's certainly the case, but I've seen multiple people say that.
Yeah, what does he have now, 9%?
9%.
So he'd be capped at 14.9. So now people are thinking maybe he's going to do a hostile takeover of Twitter.
Right.
And he's going to buy up. So he's leaving himself open to buy up, ultimately a controlling stake in the company. So he'd have to eventually get to, 51%?
51%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a ton of money, but I think peanuts for Elon Musk. Not peanuts, a ton of money, but he has it.
Well, and if you can actually weigh it out and you say, okay, well, I'm going to make the money back if I've got 51% of the shares, right? So what is the real cost? It might end up being more beneficial.
Well, the share price went up after he invested in it.
Right, yeah. So, maybe if he controlled the whole thing. People were pointing out the background check aspect of this message, saying, we announced Tuesday that Elon would be appointed to the board contingent of a background check and formal acceptance, but then the day of, he backed out. Like, maybe he couldn't pass a social media company's background check. We have to remember this guy is sending, military payloads into space. He's got, the highest level of
Is it a drug
security.
Test? Is it because he smoked on Joe Rogan?
Maybe, and he even said, remember when he tweeted out, the next Twitter board meeting's going to be lit, and it was, him smoking a joint. So,
God love him.
It's hard to believe he couldn't pass the background check. It makes more sense because he's obviously passed several layers of government security clearance. So it seems like social media would be easy, but it could be that the background check for Twitter includes things like, do you have a conflict of interest? Does any of your money invest in other places where there would be a conflict of interest with Twitter? The guy's got a boatload of cash. Who knows where else he's invested? And it could be in other social media companies that are even trying to compete with Twitter, like Getter. Who knows, right? So if he does have that might have also disqualified him in a background check. If it was, I don't know what the background check is, but if it's financial in any way, maybe. Or maybe
I think the most likely explanation is that, although a hostile takeover would certainly be interesting, I'd be entertained, I'd pay to see it. I think the most likely explanation is just that he values his ability to kind of tweet whatever he is thinking. And if he were on the board, he would have an obligation, to hold back. And the last thing we would want of this process of Elon Musk becoming more involved in Twitter is that we get less straight talk from Elon Musk, or that he ends up, instead of uncensoring Twitter, he ends up himself censoring. Would be like a very sad outcome of this process.
Which is probably why he was like, wait a minute. Right. So I wouldn't be able to say what I want to say. My whole point of buying into Twitter was to help make it more of a free speech platform. But you guys are telling me that if I'm on the board, I can no longer have my free speech. Forget it. That doesn't make any sense. I think you're right. That's probably the most likely. It's hard to imagine he's going to go from 9% to 51% ownership. That would be a lot of money. The background check thing is also kind of silly. But certainly being under a gag order, essentially, would be a problem when the whole point was to bring free speech forward. So smoke on, Elon. Smoke on.
I know. Oh, well, we can't count on Elon entirely to save Twitter or change it, but I was liking, people being like, Elon Musk, give us an edit button, whatever. And then he was like, okay, should there be an edit button? It was entertaining to watch.
And he still might, say things, because they do still have to listen to him. He is still the majority, he owns the largest shares. He's the biggest shareholder. And so they are still going to be listening to him. And
they care what he thinks. They still care what Dorsey thinks, even though Dorsey's no longer CEO. So
and maybe they would want to prevent a hostile takeover by Elon. So maybe they'd want to listen to him a little bit more, right? Just so that they could make him happy, so he doesn't feel the need to come in and say, all right, I'm just going to buy the whole thing out. This is getting ridiculous.
Well, we'll see. It's always entertaining.
But now he's no longer going to be on the board, so there's that.
Same. Oh, well. We'll have more rising after this.